For 8 years, I served the diocese as the director of vocations, working particularly with the young men who were discerning the priesthood. I always enjoyed that particular ministry immensely. And part of the job was to go and visit all of our schools and parishes, to speak on the area of vocations, to do education, and particularly the Catholic high schools. And one of the Catholic high schools that serves only the boys was very kind to always invite me every year, not only to speak in the religion classes, but they also had a career fair. And every year they would invite me to the career fair. And I don't want to get into the debate between Canisius and St. Joe's, because it's a strong debate, especially here at St. Greg's, because we have people at both schools, so I will not name the school. As I was driving to Kenmore Avenue that day, I was wondering, at this career fair, who am I going to be lined up against? Because the way the school did it, 3 people were paired together, and he went room to room, period by period. And so I get to the first classroom, and I meet the 2 people that I was up against. First was a CPA. I knew I could take him. Between the job and stories about the job and knowing accounting well, being a graduate in that area myself. The other guy was a problem. Secret Service agent. Not the guy you want to come up against. I was thinking I would have to remind him of confidentiality as he began any story because, the boys would really want to hear about him. And much to my surprise, and from my way of looking and thinking, the CPA plowed both of us under. He told a story after talking about his work as an accountant. He was a young man, only in the field a few years. He told a story that one particular day he was called into the partner's office, the partner that he was responsible to, and the partner said, "I know you're working on this particular audit. I want you to do," and gave him his marching orders. And this young accountant knew, as he was walking out of the partner's office, that what he was being asked to do was minimally not ethical, perhaps not even completely legal. And as he shared the story with the boys, he said it really called him to go home that night to pray, because he did not know what to do. As a young person moving up, hopefully in the firm, to challenge a partner would not have been a good thing. On the other hand, to not follow ethics and law would also not be a good thing. Well, his prayer certainly was very effective because he came up with the most brilliant plan. He went into the partner's office the next morning and began by saying, "I am sure I did not understand what you asked me to do." Perfect words. And he went on to explain what he thought he heard and went on to explain why he could not do that. He left the partner's office. And as he told the story later in the day, that partner came to him and said, "You did understand everything I asked you to do, but I want to thank you because at times all of us need to be reminded of our ethics." The young man was thanked for his honest answer. Choices and consequences. We all have them every day. If they be in school, if they be at work, if they be at home, if they be in our faith. We all have choices and consequences. And I went to the great informant, Google, to find some good quotes on choices and consequences. There were thousands of them. Lucky for you, there's a 12:30 Mass. Three I'll share with you that I thought were particularly good. Number one, we all make choices, but in the end, our choices make us. I like that one. We all make choices, but in the end, our choices make us. Very insightful. Second, we are free to choose our path, but we cannot choose the consequences that come with them. We are free to choose our path, but we cannot choose the consequences that come with them. Also very true. Third, when you choose an action, you choose also the consequences of that action. When you choose an action, you choose also the consequences of that action. Also true. Choices and consequences. We're reminded of them in the scripture today. Sirach gives us a very basic choice. First sentence, you may choose to keep the commandments or not. Your choice. You may choose to keep them or not. And Sirach goes on to say, I've set before you fire and water, life and death. Which direction do you wish to go? Your choice. Commandments, rules, expectations, we all deal with them every day. The real question is, how do we view them? How do you view commandments? How do you view rules? How do you view expectations? Do you see commandments, rules, expectations as something that ultimately is to ruin you, control you, or do you see them as a guideline to save you? Two very different ways to look at following rules or commands. We have many of them. Just yesterday I was going to the cathedral. In a rare moment I was running early. I do not know how that happened. And I took my usual route down Maple to North Forest to Park Club Lane to Main Street to the 290. Thankfully I was running early because, in fairness, every once in a while I may just go a hair above the speed limit. And I'm going down North Forest below the speed limit, and on one of the curves, hidden on the curve for the first time in all the years doing it, I saw a police officer with the radar. I said, thank you, Lord, that I'm running early today, Texting and driving, wearing your seatbelt, it's a choice we all make. And if we choose incorrectly, there may be some consequences we have to pay. Medication, something many of us take, if it's over the counter or prescription, come with instructions. You got to follow them. If you follow them, hopefully the choice to follow them exactly as given, you'll get well. And if not, we may overdose or lead to even an addiction. Taxes are coming up. We know what's expected of us as we follow those forms and tax code. Sometimes some may try to stretch, the truth just a pinch. And if the IRS sends you one of those letters, that choice may lead to a consequence, a costly one. I don't know if you are like I am, but I'm one of those crazy people that actually reads the book that comes with a car. I don't know, do you ever really read that book? I actually read the book, And in that book, part of it is the scheduled maintenance. I don't know if you like going for scheduled maintenance. I'm one of the very few people who love it. I love it because they have fresh fruit and coffee for free. And I get more work done there as I wait for my car than I do in my office in a week. It's great. I love going for scheduled maintenance. I also love going for scheduled maintenance. Why? Because if I follow it, hopefully I will be avoiding some higher repair bills down the road. The list could go on. I think you got the point. Huh? Choices and consequences. We have them in our faith. Sirach reminds us of the commandments, Jesus in the gospel, referring to commands, a way to live, and really actually raising the bar, raising the standard. What does he say? Your righteousness must surpass that of the scribes and the Pharisees. Raising the bar. And if you really think about it for a moment, for the people who heard this, they must have been blown away. Because the average person was not educated. The average person led a very simple life. Scribes, the Pharisees, they were educated. They were the leaders. If you're telling me, the uneducated person working day to day just to survive, that I've got to be holier than them, it had to be overwhelming. Raising the bar in that command. You've heard it said, you shall not kill. Whoever kills will be liable to judgment. But what I say to you is, whoever becomes angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Raising the bar. You've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But what I say to you is, whoever looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Raising the bar. You've heard it said, do not take false oaths. But what I say to you is, do not swear at all. Let your yes mean yes. Let your no mean no. Raising the bar, the command, the way to live. Today, a simple basic question. How do you choose? And are you even aware that you have choices to make? And are you aware that all of these choices ultimately do have consequences? Finally, are you willing to raise that bar in your life that Jesus calls us to live? What is your view? Do you see God's commandments and Jesus' teaching as an instruction to control you? Or do you see the commandments and Jesus' teaching as a framework to preserve your life? Not only here, but for eternal. Does God confine us? Is that your view? Or does God give us ultimate freedom? Ultimately, I believe God gives us freedom. And within that freedom, if we choose to follow those commands, that way to life, we have a parameter to live, which makes some other decisions pretty easy, and also gives us a greater richness to life here and life eternal. The following of the commandments leads to joy and to a rich life. I don't know about you, but I'm going to guess you're not that different than me. I do not need all of the commandments. I really don't. I do not need all of the commandments. Because some of the commandments, some of the teachings are things I've never struggled with and have never been a problem. I don't really need them. I'm not suggesting we get rid of them. I'm just saying I don't really need them. However, there are some of the commandments and the teachings that I really need, probably on a post-it note on every wall that I pass through the day, because I really do need to be reminded of them, because they're the ones that I struggle with the most. This week, maybe especially as we're slowly getting ready for Lent, this week maybe really think about that commandment, that teaching you struggle the most with. When did you find the hardest to live by or accept? Really think about that and think maybe if there were moments where you really violated that commandment or teaching, if you can see how it really has hurt your life or hurt someone else's life. And maybe some regret you live because of that. And as we get ready for Lent, maybe the Lenten discipline, more important than giving up candy or ice cream or something else, take on that command, that teaching, the one we struggle the most with to understand or abide by. Pray over it, study it, and really try to follow it in a greater way.